Good afternoon, welcome to our daily press briefing online and live on EBS. Today is Monday, 22nd of February. We have one announcement for you today, so I will call Johannes with good news for researchers.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning. Yes, indeed, today the Commission adopted the work programme of the European Research Council for the current year 2021. This is not only good news for potential beneficiaries of European Research Council grants, because this also means that the first calls for proposals of the new Horizon Europe programme are herewith announced and will be launched shortly. The European Research Council will publish 3 main calls for proposals this year for together 1.9 billion euros for frontier research actions that will help top researchers to pursue breakthrough discoveries. And as always, we have more information today in a press release, but also, of course, in the daily news. Thank you.
Merci, Johannes. Avant de passer à vos questions, permettez-moi de vous rappeler les 3 réunions qui ont lieu aujourd'hui de l'autre côté de la rue au Conseil. D'abord, une visioconférence informelle des ministres de la pêche de l'Union européenne est actuellement en cours, à laquelle participe le commissaire Virginijus Sinkevicius. Les ministres discuteront ou ont discuté des consultations bilatérales entre l'Union européenne et le Royaume-Uni sur les possibilités de pêche pour 2021 et en ce qui concerne les stocks d'eau profonde pour 2021 et 2022. Une conférence de presse avec le commissaire Sinkevicius commence dans quelques minutes vers 12h15. Puis le vice-président exécutif Valdis Dombrovskis et les commissaires Nicolas Schmit et Helena Dalli participent aujourd'hui à une visioconférence informelle des ministres de l'Emploi et de la politique sociale. Ils débattront de l'avenir d'une Europe sociale forte en mettant l'accent sur l'emploi, les compétences et la lutte contre la pauvreté et l'exclusion sociale, ainsi que sur l'égalité entre les hommes et les femmes en tant que moteur de la reprise. Une conférence de presse avec les commissaires Schmit et Dalli aura lieu vers 16h30. And finally, High Representative Vice President Josep Borrell is today chairing the Foreign Affairs Council, as I'm sure you're aware. On the agenda are EU-Russia relations, strengthening the EU's common security and defense culture, and Hong Kong, along with a number of important current affairs issues such as Myanmar, Belarus, and the future of the Iran nuclear deal. Ministers will also have an exchange of views on EU-US relations via video link with the new US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. The High Representative will hold a press conference at the end of the Council later in the afternoon. And as always, on all these Council meetings, followed by press conferences, I would ask you to address your questions on the topics to the commissioners present at the press conferences. With this, we are ready for your questions, and I immediately pass the floor to Naomi.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for taking my question. Mine is on health/vaccines. So the Danish authorities have announced a target of June 27th, by which they say that everyone who wants a vaccine should be fully vaccinated there. My question is, what are the factors that allow for such a quicker vaccination program, given, under the EU system, everyone had the same opportunity to access vaccines? And the overall EU target, of course, is September 21st. So what could account for the difference there? Is it due to Denmark perhaps taking up stocks of vaccines like Pfizer that other countries declined? Or is it down to maybe having a one-shot strategy? Or what are the variables between that and the overall EU target date of September 21st? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Naomi. A question for Stefan.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Thank you for this question, but I think I'm not in a position to give comments on what individual member states are doing. As you know, vaccination campaigns, the organization deployment of vaccines is a member state responsibility. This being said, you know that we had established in our communication a 70% vaccination target of all adult people by the summer. Member states who are able to reach these targets before the end of the summer are, of course, more than welcome to do so. These are very ambitious targets, but it depends very much on first the deliveries of the vaccines. They have to be delivered in time, that's one. Second, it also depends on how member states are setting up their vaccination campaigns. So it's up to the member states to reach these targets. We, of course, very much welcome any member state reaching targets before the end of the summer, as we had announced earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. We will now stay on the issue of vaccines and vaccination campaigns. So please only keep your hand raised if... Naomi, you have a follow-up, I see. Sorry.
Yeah, if that's okay, thank you. So maybe without commenting specifically on Denmark, could you say whether some member states have taken up additional Pfizer doses that other member states turned down, and whether, to your knowledge, some member states are pursuing a one-shot vaccine strategy? Thank you.
Stefan.
Yes, thank you. Well, again, I don't think I can go into what different member states have done in terms of taking up vaccines, which vaccines, and so on. You know that the vaccines are distributed on the basis of a population-based criteria. It is possible, as you also know, that member states may decide between themselves to take less. Some member states may wish less of a certain vaccine. Other member states may wish more of a certain vaccine. This is possible if it's agreed between the member state. Discussions like this have taken place, for instance, in the context of the steering board. But then it very much depends indeed on the different approaches that are being followed by the member states following their own national arrangements. But I don't think I can give more comments on this particular situation at this stage. Thank you.
Tony, you have the floor.
Thank you. This is not on vaccines. Is that okay?
No, sorry, Tony. As you know the rules of the game, we'll come back to you later. We stick to vaccines and vaccination. Verena. Go ahead, Verena. We can hear you.
Yeah, it always takes a while. Thanks for the question. I'm Verena SCHMITT-ROSCHMANN with the German Press Agency. Also on vaccines, there was reporting late last week about the original pricing that BioNTech Pfizer asked from the Commission last summer, which was, according to those reports, 55 euros per dose of the vaccine. I was wondering if you could comment on that, and also on the reaction by CEO Sahin, who sort of reacted a bit angered, if I may summarize it that way, and also talked about the pricing. And in that context, you tweeted that last night President von der Leyen talked to Mr. Sahin, and I was wondering if you could elaborate if that was sort of a crisis talk or what this was about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Verena, for this question. No, the phone call yesterday was actually about the announcement that we had made earlier that week. You will remember on the HERA incubator initiative. The president, who has very good relationships with Mr. Sahin and is in regular contact with him, had a phone call with him to discuss the next steps in that process, the tasks that need to be undertaken in order to ensure that we can kickstart, in a way, this initiative. So they had a long chat about all the different dimensions of the initiative that you are well aware of. Let me take the opportunity, in view of the discussion on the price that you mentioned at the beginning of your question, to underline the fact that the Commission has got an excellent relationship with BioNTech Pfizer, both in terms of current cooperation as well as the mid and longer term issue of COVID-19 variants, which was the issue of the conversation in the context of the HERA incubator initiative. So we basically have always said that the issue of price was but one of many dimensions in the negotiations that we had with companies all along. There were many other important, in fact, more important issues during the negotiations, such as the issue of liability, for example, and Stefan has on many opportunities given you our readout of how those negotiations went and how they were structured. Thank you. Tommaso. Verena, you have a follow-up, sorry.
Yes, if you could, Eric, could you just simply comment on that price? Was it the price that they asked for? And how did the negotiations go that the EU ended up paying less? Thanks.
Verena, as you know, we've never, ever commented on prices in the course of these negotiations, and we're certainly not going to start now, which actually also is a clear sign that this debate certainly does not originate anywhere in the Commission. We have always said we had a negotiation process with the different pharmaceutical companies in order to secure a number of doses. We were acting as an investor on behalf of all the member states, who are then the ones who buy the vaccines. Now, in the process, as you know, there were initial contacts with the companies who made initial offers, and then these offers obviously evolved over time as the negotiations took place. But we're certainly not going to go into any details as to what were the very, very initial proposals that could have been made by companies, because very clearly, ultimately, we signed the contracts based on an overall assessment of all of the variables that were included in the contracts. Let me now give the floor to Tommaso.
Yes, good morning, Eric. Thank you for taking my question. It's a question on vaccines, actually, because I've read in the Italian press, namely La Repubblica, on Saturday, they interviewed a pharmaceutical broker. His name is Yuri Gasparotti. He's a legitimate pharmaceutical broker. He explained that he has availability to provide AstraZeneca vaccines to Italian authorities and other authorities in the EU. And he specifically said that he could purchase those vaccines from AstraZeneca through another extra EU company, but those vaccines are actually produced in the European manufacturing plant of AstraZeneca, which I presume is the one in Senef in Belgium. This might seems an evidence that AstraZeneca is actually producing in that plant vaccines which are then sold in other parts of the world. You have an export control mechanism in place. I wonder if you can tell us something about this, because I mean it might be worrying, because in Italy there are continued cuts to the supply of vaccines. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the issue of export authorizations, I give the floor to Miriam.
Yes, indeed, as you rightly said, we have in place an export authorization scheme which allows us to have transparency. So just to update on the progress of this export authorization scheme, so far we have received 103 requests. All of them have been approved, and we have exported to 25 countries. So with this system, we know where the exports are going. We know, and we want to ensure at the same time timely access of vaccines for EU citizens, as this was one of the aims of having in place these transparency mechanisms.
Thank you, and I will pass the floor to Stefan on the question as well. Stefan.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. Thank you also, Tommaso. It's of course very difficult to give comments on these kind of comments. What I would like to stress, however, is that you have to be very careful with such things. You have no guarantee whatsoever that what's in the vial is indeed the product which is supposed to be in the vial. So there are big risks if you would get involved in this kind of operations, as also President von der Leyen has stressed during last week's press conference. You also don't know, for instance, whether all the transport requirements have been respected in the sense of the necessary cooling. Have the vials been transported respecting the necessary cooling requirements? So this comes with quite some risks. In any case, as far as we are concerned, we have, as you know, secured in the meantime 2.6 billion doses, of which quite a lot of doses are now being produced, and we believe that this number of doses will allow covering the needs of the European citizens. If we go beyond the whole issue of this parallel marketing, I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that we are aware of these tendencies of a growing number of fraud or attempts to fraud, and that OLAF is actually investigating this and also issuing advice on how to help member states in fighting this. Thank you.
This said without putting into doubt the legitimacy of the person concerned, obviously. So we stick to the issue of vaccines and vaccination. We move to Joe. Tommaso, you have a follow-up, sorry.
Yes, just if I may, thank you for the answers, but it's just to understand, is AstraZeneca allowed to sell vaccine doses which are produced in SENEF to extra EU companies? That is the issue. Can they do that or not?
They can certainly apply for an export authorization since the entry into force of the regulation, which was on the 1st of February, if I remember well, 30th of January, thank you, Miriam. So since then, companies can, of course, apply for an authorization export. But before that, obviously, they could also export doses of vaccines without having to request an authorization. So this is the factual situation in which we are. So now I move to Joe.
Thank you, Eric. Much appreciated. So there have been numerous reports recently from member states that people are turning down being injected by the AstraZeneca vaccine, Belgium, Italy, France, Germany, for example. And in recent weeks, we've seen kind of very senior politicians question the safety of vaccines. Ursula von der Leyen in the context of the UK's emergency authorisation process. French President Emmanuel Macron actually named the AstraZeneca Oxford jab and called it quasi-ineffective. Today, the German government has had to come out and actually tell people the AstraZeneca vaccine is safe for use. So does the Commission regret that politicians have publicly questioned the safety of coronavirus vaccines, especially ones that make up a key pillar of Europe's efforts to roll out vaccines? And secondly, does the Commission have to be more proactive in presenting a positive case for vaccines in order to reach your summer target and basically to kind of end a culture of what seems like European anti-vaxxers that have emerged more recently? Thank you.
Thank you. A question for Stefan.
Thank you very much. It was always very important for us from the beginning that the safety and the effectiveness of the vaccine can be guaranteed. And this is exactly one of the reasons why the Commission and the Member States, together in the vaccine strategy, insisted on EMA, European Medicines Agency, assessing the safety and effectiveness of this vaccine. They have done so in the meantime for 3 vaccines, of which EMA has given a positive recommendation, has given the green light, stating that indeed the vaccine is safe and effective. This is very important, not just for the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine per se, but also because indeed, as you refer to, we have to convince the European citizens of the importance of the vaccination. And one of the ways to do this, many ways have to be followed. One of the very important ways to do this is to be able to show to the European citizens that EMA, the European Medicines Agency, has done this very thorough assessment of the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine. So this is very important, and this is meant to actually help not just the production of safe and effective vaccines, but also to convince member states of the fact that the active substance that is being injected is indeed safe and effective. And so this is something that has been done from the beginning. In addition to that, it's of course very important that member states and Commission continue to inform the citizens of the importance of getting the vaccination done, because we need sufficient levels of vaccination, as you know very well, to ensure that we win this fight against the virus. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, you have a follow-up.
Yes, thank you, Eric. So I'm not sure on each commissioner's age, but would the Commission consider having basically not live broadcast, but publicising the injection of the AstraZeneca jab into commissioners as a way of showing the people it's safe, rather than just kind of putting out tweets? A similar strategy has been used in France.
Thank you, Joe. As you know, the Commission will be following the Belgian vaccination campaign, as Balázs explained here on Friday, and therefore it will be in the context of that vaccination campaign that it will be decided which vaccine is used. We continue on vaccines. Angela.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for taking my question. I would go back to the question that Tommaso Galavotti asked before about the interview to this broker, which appeared on one of the Italian newspapers 2 or 3 days ago. I wanted to know, are you aware that through this system, that means by selling some stocks of vaccines to third companies, the pharmaceutical companies manage to sell vaccines to single regions or single states, breaching the European strategy on vaccines? And what are the countermeasures, if there are any, you are considering to put in place to forbid this mechanism, which I think it's a breach on the in the European approach to vaccines. And the other thing is, do you think what could be the problem here? Do you think the problem could be the price? The fact that the European Commission agreed on a certain price at the beginning when the contracts were signed, and now they can, whereas now the companies can sell vaccines at a higher price to regions and states, so they earn more. Do you think the price could be the problem, or what? Thanks.
Thank you, Angela. I don't believe that we are aware of any individual countries or regions having actually bought and received doses of such vaccines. But I turn to Stéphane.
Thank you very much, Eric, and that's absolutely correct. We're not aware of that. It is indeed true that we have our EU vaccine strategy, which is based on a joint approach, a common approach, which has the very big advantage that by working together, we develop a big firepower, I would say, in our negotiations with these companies. And so parallel negotiations, be it with member states or regions, are not allowed under this vaccine strategy. That's something which is clear, which has been made clear on several occasions. I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that we have secured, as I said before, 2.6 billion doses of vaccines. 1.2 billion doses approximately of the 3 first companies with whom we have approved vaccines are being produced. So we are confident that our supply lines will allow covering all the European citizens, so that there would be no need for entering into such bilateral agreements, which, as I said before, are indeed not allowed under the vaccine strategy. And that's, I think, what I wanted to say on this. Thank you.
Angela, you have a follow-up.
The interview said that it's not working for the black market, but is working for actual big pharma companies. Do you think it could be the case to investigate whether to know whether they are doing this. They're trying to, what he says, that they're trying to make contracts with single regions or single states. Could it be the case to investigate, to, at least to be aware of what they are doing? Thanks.
Stefan.
Thank you very much. What matters to us, I think, is that we make sure that the contracts that we have concluded with the different companies ensure the quick delivery of sufficient number of doses for all the member states. That's very important. These numbers of doses have been fixed, also taking into account the needs of the different regions in the different member states. So they cover the whole population of the European Union. And this is something that matters very much to make sure that these deliveries can actually take place. And voilà, thank you.
Thank you. I would now pass the floor to James, if it's on vaccines or vaccination.
Yes, hello, Eric. It's on vaccines and vaccinations. Just returning to what Joe was talking about, because I think the sort of the nub of his question really wasn't answered. Mrs. von der Leyen's repeatedly stressed that this is a sort of superior safety procedures that the EU has gone through. She talks about vaccines being an injection of an active biological substance into a healthy body. I mean, do you see any connection between distrust of the AstraZeneca vaccine and Mrs. von der Leyen's comments or Mr. Macron's comments? And if so, what are you going to do about it? Thank you.
No, we don't, and we have repeatedly stressed the fact that once a vaccine has been approved by the European Medicines Agency, it is definitely a vaccine that can be and should be used on the European market. Verena, we come back to you.
Yes, thanks again. The EMA actually recommended authorization of the AstraZeneca vaccine without age limit, while several member states then created their own age limits of 65 or 55. And I was wondering if that undermined the trust in the vaccine, and if there were any efforts on your part or in the Council to sort of get a common line, an alignment of, behind the actual EMA recommendation, which was without age limit. Thanks.
A question for Stefan.
Thank you very much, Verena. It's correct that EMA has given the green light for the use of the AstraZeneca without an age limit, as you say. And what was important for EMA, what is important for EMA, is to indeed, as I said before, check and assess the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine. This being said, member states, of course, are responsible, have the competence for their own vaccination policies. And so member states may decide to add additional requirements to the use of a certain vaccine, of course, to the extent that this respects or that this does not go against the decision or the recommendation that has been taken by EMA. But so if it is part of a member state policy to follow a stricter line based on the specific circumstances that may exist in each member state, this is possible, but again, always respecting EMA. The fact that EMA has assessed the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine is in itself, as I said before, a very powerful signal to the European citizens that these vaccines that they're injected with are indeed safe and effective. So this way of working, I think, will not change. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick, question on vaccines.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Eric. Yeah, it's just on this AstraZeneca thing as well, because we've seen in Germany the take-up is only around 17% of that jab. Can the Commission meet the EU target to vaccinate 70% of adults in September without the AstraZeneca vaccine? Could you use others if the uptake is that low across the continent? And if you end up with a load of AZ jabs that you can't get people here in Europe to take, what are you going to do with them? Might you give those to other countries? Thank you.
Stefan.
Thank you very much. We have set indeed the 70% target, which is, as I said before, an ambitious but a realistic target. We believe that this target can be achieved, but of course this depends on several elements, and these are elements towards which we are working definitely. A very important element is that the vaccines are delivered according to plan. That's very important. We are in constant contact with the different companies, as you know, to make sure that this happens. And on the basis of what we know, on the basis of the plans, we believe that sufficient doses of vaccines will be made available by the summer so that we can indeed reach this target. But in addition to that, I would also like to stress that it's not just a matter of timely delivery of the vaccines, but it's also up to member states to make sure that they organize well their vaccination campaigns. This is, as I said before, a national competence, so member states are handling this. It's very important that this is done well so that on that basis we can indeed reach the target of 70%. I'm not sure I got the second question.
No, that was it.
Sorry?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
So we close now the health chapter. Thank you very much. And we go back to Tony, who had a question on another issue. Tony, you have the floor. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I was wondering if you have a response to the decision by a number of unionist parties and British politicians to take legal action against the protocol on Ireland, Northern Ireland, on the basis that it is against the Act of Union 1800 and that it contravenes the Good Friday Belfast Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. A question for Dan.
Hi, Tony. Thanks very much for your question there. On this, I think I would just reiterate once again that we are fully committed to the Good Friday Belfast Agreement and to the proper implementation of the protocol in Ireland and Northern Ireland, protecting the gains of the peace process, protecting and maintaining stability, avoiding a hard border on the island of Ireland, and importantly, minimizing the impact of Brexit on the everyday lives of communities north and south of the border. Now, you will have seen the statement that we published on the 11th of February by Vice President Šefčovič and Michael Gove, reiterating once again and underlining our firm commitment to the proper implementation of the protocol and also finding workable solutions to the various different outstanding implementation issues. You will have also seen, I'm sure, that the Vice President held some roundtable meetings last week, notably with Northern Irish business groups and also with representatives from civil society, all of which showed actually quite constructive, solution-driven discussions and outcomes. And it's exactly that we will be bringing with us into the specialised committee tomorrow and the joint committee on Wednesday, that of a constructive attitude and that of a solutions-driven attitude. Now, of course, we can provide you with more details after the joint committee meeting takes place on Wednesday.
Thank you, Dan. Are there other questions for us on Brexit-related issues? Please only keep your hand raised if it is on this. That does not seem to be the case, so I move to Martina. Martina, you have the floor. But your mic source seems to be wrong. Yeah, go ahead. Empty chair policy, I see. That's the first time we've had that. An active mic and camera, but no journalist. Martina, where are you? Celle-là, c'est pour les annales. Okay, we will move to other issues. Tommaso, you have the floor.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the floor. I have a question. I think it's on foreign affairs. It's on what happened in the last minutes or hours. It was reported an attack to a convoy of the United States, United Nations, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. According to the first reports, there are 2 confirmed victims. Both of them are Italians, and an EU official was injured. Would you please share with us all the information you have with regard to this attack? And of course, what is your reaction to this act of violence? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we learned the news also very recently. I pass the floor to Nabila. Nabila, à toi.
Hello. Thank you for the question. We have seen the reports on the attack on the UN convoy, including the initial reports of the death of the ambassador of Italy. The news are extremely worrying, and we are following the situation closely with the EU delegation in DRC. The HRVP has reported this to the FAC and presents its condolences to Italy, to the UN, and to the victims of the violence in Congo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, this is terrible news. Indeed, I understand that it is now being discussed in the Foreign Affairs Council, that the Italian minister is also sharing the information that he has, and we will continue to follow these dramatic developments very, very closely. We continue on the issue of foreign relations. Lukáš.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question on Belarus because last year the European.
Yeah, sorry about that. But as you know, I mean, the only issue that we can take, the only issues we can take are those which are not on the FAC agenda. Belarus is on the agenda of the FAC, so I would ask you to address your questions on this to the press conference, which will take place after the council meeting. Apologies for that. Okay. Right. Now let us move on to other topics. I pass the floor to Jakob.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. Okay, great. I saw that there's a phone call scheduled tomorrow between Commissioner Varhelyi and the Turkish Trade Minister, and wanted to ask whether this will be about the customs union and who requested the call, what the EU wants to offer in terms of updating the customs union. Thanks.
Thank you. A question for Anna.
Hi, dear Jacob. Many thanks for the question. I'm afraid that I am not in a position to say anything. We don't normally comment on phone calls that have not even taken place yet. So I am more than happy to get back to you once and if the phone calls takes place in order to see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Anna on neighborhood issues, neighborhood files? In any case, I only see one hand raised, so we will go to you, Ragnar, be it for Anna or for somebody else. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
My name is Ragnar SKRE. I'm a freelance journalist reporting for the Norwegian newspaper Nationen. I was wondering if I could get a comment from the Commission regarding fishing in the Svalbard zone. The EU has recently issued quota licenses for cod and snow crab in the Svalbard zone. And regarding cod, Norway has set a lower quota for EU than the EU has issued. And the fisheries minister has said that only Norway has the power to set quotas for cod in the Svalbard zone, and any fishing that exceeds the quota would be regarded as illegal, and the Coast Guard will ensure that the quota is not exceeded by EU boats. Now, the spokeswoman for the Fishing Commissioner, Vivian Lonello, seemed to challenge Norway's sovereignty in a quote last week reported by the news agency NTV. She referred to a well-established approach and that the EU believes Norway is violating the Svalbard Treaty. Now, regarding the snow crab, Norway's position is that these licenses must be issued by Norway because the seabed around Svalbard is under Norwegian territorial jurisdiction. But this view has never been accepted internationally. However, it also has never been put to a test until now. So my question is, if the Norwegian Coast Guard should arrest a boat from an EU country operating in the Svalbard zone, and either for cod fishing or for snow crab fishing. How will the EU react then? And is the EU not afraid of weakening Norwegian sovereignty in Svalbard?
Thank you very much, Ragnar. Delighted to have you here at the midday press briefing. However, as I said at the outset of today's midday briefing, we actually have we had a council, a fisheries council going on, and in fact there is a press conference which, according to my information, should be ongoing at the moment. So I would ask you to address your questions to the European Commissioner during that press conference, because we cannot take questions on issues on which he is currently giving a press conference. We move on to other issues. Lukáš, you have another question.
Second time, I have a question on transport, if I can.
Yes, go ahead.
On Friday, the European Commission published impact assessment of the two specific aspects of the mobility package. And according to the studies, the two provisions of this package could result in the up to 3.3 million additional tons of CO2 emission annually. And what else? Additional up to 700 millions of nitrogen oxides, 250 tons of PM2.5, very harmful substance. So it's a really important issue which could affect our climate, but also our health. So my question is how it's possible that such a legislation, which is actually against the European climate strategy and also against the health of the European citizens, were approved by the European Parliament, which is actually pro-European, which have pro-European majority and majority in the Council. Are the Commission, are you disappointed that such a legislation was adopted? And what is your plan actually to fix it? Do you plan to present any new draft legislation just to fix this part of the mobility package? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lukáš. This is a well-known issue that we have commented upon many, many times here in the press room at the time of the discussions between Parliament and Council. So I will pass the floor to Stefan to update you again on what our position is.
Thank you very much for this. Indeed, we have seen the results of the studies which were commissioned to assess indeed the effects of two provisions of the mobility package introduced by the European Parliament and the Council. It is true that these measures from which we launched an impact assessment were not covered by the Commission's initial proposals. We have now received the outcome of these studies, and we are obviously open to discuss with the Member States, with the European Parliament and all parties, all concerned parties, to see what are the possible ways forward based on the data and the findings of these studies. We aim to have an open dialogue about this to assess the potential next steps in light of the needs of the Green Deal objectives, the proper functioning of the single market, and the need, of course, also to secure high social standards for and the well-being of the drivers. Thank you very much.
Lukáš, you have another question, a follow-up.
Follow-up. Is there a possibility for such a scenario in which you will present a new draft for the new legislation? Thank you.
Lukáš, we're certainly not going to answer such a question at this stage. As you know, very generally, the Commission has got a right of initiative, but we are in a situation where legislation has just been approved. And Stefan has explained to you just now what measures we have taken in order to assess some of the impacts of this legislation. Are there other questions for us today on other issues? That does not seem to be the case, so thank you very much and see you tomorrow.